Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. Thank you for downloading. And thank you for subscribing to the latest edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. I am your boy, 12 Kyle. And on this episode, we're going to talk football and a little bit more than just football. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Um, when you're, particularly for me on this podcast, uh, it's easy to interview people, but some of the hardest people to interview are the people that you know and the people that you call friends. And I got not only friends but family member on here on this episode. Man, we're gonna be sitting down talking with the associate. Let me make sure I got this title right. Associate athletic director for football. Is that correct? I'm
Assistant
sorry,
AD for football. Yeah,
assistant AD for football at Florida A&M University. Um, Friend of the show. I mean, again, we like family. I've literally known this dude since probably he was like 10. Been friends forever. Clemson graduate, and like I said, currently employed at Florida A&M University. My man LaTroy Johnson is in the building. Troy, what up, man?
Kyle, what's up, man? I appreciate the invite, man. I'm glad to join. It's been a minute. I've been trying to get on. Your list is long, man. I had to
Hey,
try to
man.
navigate my way in there.
Hey, you got some shoes to fill because Starworth came on here and he kind of did his thing a little bit.
Hey, man. Star got that doctorate now, so he was probably on here dropping metaphors and everything. Speaking
he
from his
wasn't. He,
dissertation.
he wasn't. He wasn't, but he tried. Um, so yeah, man, let's start right there. We like I said, we go way back. Troy's mom, Miss Felder, uh, then Miss Johnson was a long time employee at South Carolina State University, where I went to school in undergrad, and she was the head librarian at South Carolina State. Also a classmate and close friend of my uncle Harry Carson, who they were both in undergrad together at South Carolina State, and that is Troy's mom. So and Troy's godfather, and so like I said, Troy and we go way back because of the closeness of our families. But Troy, before we get into like your career, you grew up in Orangeburg, South Carolina, which is where South Carolina State is. I mentioned that you went to undergrad at Clemson.
Mhm.
So how, and I never asked you this, I'm gonna ask you now. How and why do you leave Orangeburg and go to Clemson? Because I know we talked a little bit before your senior year in high school, and I guess it probably was assumed that you were going to South Carolina State. So how do you leave Orangeburg to go up north to the northwestern part of South Carolina and Clemson University?
Man, it's a funny story. So I always knew I wanted to do something in sports, and I wanted to
Mhm.
major in some shape, form, or fashion in sport management or something along those lines. And at the time, South Carolina State didn't really have that. The
We
closest
didn't.
thing to it was the PE department. With Dr. Ken Mosley and all of those people over there in PE.
Hmm.
So, like you said, it was kind of the unwritten rule, that I'm just
Right.
gonna go to South Carolina State. I went to Felton. My mom worked on campus, still works there to this day, and so
Hmm.
I had been a ball boy with you guys, and I had been a ball
Yep.
boy for Coach Sky, and all of those type things playing into it. And so I think everybody just automatically thought I was going to South Carolina State. But the crazy thing was, I noticed I said me. I never applied to South Carolina State. I never
Really?
filled out an application or anything. Now my mom did for me.
Okay.
I didn't. So at first, I was really going to Florida A&M. Crazy as it sounds, right?
Really?
I had applied to FAM. FAM had a upstart sport management program at the time, and my cousin from Jersey had came down, and he was going to FAM. One of my good friends, Alex Barron, who played high school ball with me, he had committed to Florida State, so he was
Florida
going to
State,
Florida
right?
State, and so
Hmm.
I was going to FAM. And then Himby, Ryan, not Bobby, but Himby,
Shout out to Ryan.
yeah, he committed to Clemson.
Okay.
And so when he committed to Clemson, Coach Stock, who recruited Ryan, and then he recruited Woody and Jackie and all those guys, he came back to Orangeburg and was like, "Hey, we have this equipment manager program that gives scholarships, to guys that come in and work in the equipment room." And he was like, "I think you'll be a good fit." And so I went home. I talked to my mom about it, and mom was like, "Well, you got Fam on one hand, and you got Clemson on the other hand. Clemson's in state, Fam's out of state. I ain't paying out of state tuition,
I know
so
that's right.
you going to Clemson." You know what I'm saying? And they were giving some money. So she
Mhm.
knew I really didn't want to go to South Carolina State, and I think probably Kyle because I probably had a honorary degree from there from being around you
Right,
guys all the time. You know,
right.
from being with football players and then hanging out in Mitchell with the basketball team. I knew what state was. I knew what it was all
Hmm.
about. So I had to take my talents elsewhere, as LeBron says, and and go to Clemson. So I went with Ryan. We eventually became roommates in college, and the rest is history.
Hmm. No doubt, no doubt. And it's funny hearing you tell that story because like you spent so much time on the South Carolina State campus. I'm pretty sure there were probably, and there probably still is, a bunch of people that think that you went to school there and
No
graduated
question.
from there. And when I tell you guys, his mom still, even to this day, is the sweetest. She looked out for us so many times in South Carolina State when we really probably didn't need to, um, but she was always there. And it was great to have somebody like that who was a name and a face on the campus. Particularly because I'm coming from Florence at the time. I didn't know anybody there except for the couple of people that came down, my cousin Eric and a couple other people that I went to high school with. But
Yeah,
yeah, she definitely looked out for us. So it makes sense. It makes sense now.
yeah.
And I told this story before, like, South Carolina State wasn't number one on my list either. Like it was like fourth or fifth. So, it just so
It was
happened.
last resort, man. Like it was
Mm-hmm.
gonna be the last resort,
Mm-hmm.
And but to your point, a lot of people still think, when they see me now, if I'm at a South Carolina State event, they'll be
Right.
like, "Hey, man, what class did you grad?" No, I didn't, dog. I took some classes, but I didn't graduate from that.
What was I know you mentioned Ryan Hemby. Um, and Clemson had a pretty good football team in the time that you were there. But it wasn't Clemson wasn't the juggernaut, the national power that it is now. You mentioned Woody
Yeah,
Dantzler, who I think at Woody's senior year wasn't he in the Heisman running? He was like top
he
10
was.
in Heisman voting, something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, he was.
So Clemson was they were a really good school nationally, but they weren't the national powerhouse. What was special about Clemson football at that particular time? And did you ever, two-part question, what was special about Clemson at the time as far as football? And then did you ever see Clemson being this, juggernaut that it is now?
Man, I tell people all the time that it's something different about the air in Clemson, right?
Mm-hmm.
And just I think anybody that goes to school anywhere, they consider their schools to be one of the best and all of that
Of
type of stuff.
course.
So we like to say it's God's country and all of that, right? Because the sky turns orange and purple when the sun sets and all of that. But at the end of the day, the people is what make Clemson special.
Okay.
When I went there for the first time, I think we went to a game my senior year in high school. And, for the first time, seeing the guys run down the hill and hearing that
Mhm.
roar and how the people just take hold to it and everybody walking around, hey, what's up, Tiger? Hey, what's up, Tiger? Like everybody just embraces, each other. And so when you finally get there and you get in school and you're around parade All Americans and first team All ACC guys and all of that, just to see them take you under their wings, right? I
Mhm.
got there. We were a senior heavy team when I got there. We
Okay.
had Rod Gardner, who ended up being a first rounder for the
Yep.
Redskins. We had Akil Smith, who was on the offensive line. Travis Zachary played running back. We had a senior laden offensive line team. Nick Eason on the defensive line, who ended up playing in the league, and Rob Carswell, and all of those guys. Like I can go down the list,
Mhm.
but they took you under their wings, and like you became one of them immediately.
Okay.
Some of my best friends, 2/3 of the guys that was in my wedding, I met at Clemson.
Oh
You know what I
wow.
mean?
That's what's
My
up.
son's his couple, his godfathers were Clemson grads, and they played on those teams. So I think it starts with the people, but it started to take off, Kyle, my freshman year. We started off like 3-0, and we beat Missouri and Clemson, and it was like, oh, like this is about to it's about to get serious. And
Mhm.
we were number 3 in the country, either 3 or
Okay.
5 in the country. My freshman year, we started off like 8-0, and we lost to Georgia Tech at home the week before we went to Tallahassee. We was coming to Tallahassee to play in Bowden Bowl 2, I
Yeah,
think,
man.
or 3. It was
And
Bowden Bowl 2.
I'm a Florida State fan too, so I remember this very
Yeah,
well.
we lost to Georgia Tech at home on the last play of the game. They called a touchdown in the back of the end zone to beat us, and that was our first loss of the year. And we went to Tallahassee the next week to play Florida State, and I think they were like number 1 or 2 in
Yep.
the country at the time with Winky and Boware and Greg Jones had running. Like they were loaded. Like I
Mm-hmm.
think 10 out of the 11 guys on the starting defense played on Sundays, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it was crazy. And it was hype because we were supposed to crush Georgia Tech and go into that game 9-0. And both of us were going to be undefeated. The winner
Undefeated.
was going to win the ACC, have an upstart, leg at the national championship. And when I tell you, they gave us the business.
Yes.
Like they gave us the business. Like I think Winky hit Snoop Minutes for like a 99-yard touchdown
Snoop
on a
Mints.
play action. I think they ran a play action power, and he pulled up and threw the post ball and Snoop hit his head on the goalpost. Like right. And so we lose to Georgia Tech, we lose to Florida State, and then we come back and we have to beat South Carolina on a field goal. Like Woody throws a go ball to Rod catches it, falls out of bounds. All of the South Carolina people say it was a push off, but I mean,
right.
we were just gaining leverage. You know how wide receivers are.
Oh yeah, for sure.
You know what I'm saying? You got to throw a little bit in there to get some leverage, but
Got
now
to.
we got leverage. We won. We kicked the field goal to win, and then we lost to Mike Vick in the Gator Bowl that year.
Mike Vick was cold too.
Yeah, he was stupid cold. He was stupid cold. And so I'm looking at it and I'm like, man. So from my freshman year to my sophomore year to my junior year, to answer your second part of your question, I didn't think we was going to ever get past that mark because we would always lose games that we weren't supposed to.
Facts.
Right? We would lose to an NC State team who really wasn't that good. Right? Like we would just come out and just like my senior year, we lose to Wake Forest at Wake Forest. Like who does that?
Yeah, that's games you're not supposed to lose.
You're not supposed to lose. And they crushed us. I'm talking about they crushed us. And we come in off of that game to play Florida State at home the next week, and they number 1 in the country again. Right? Now, we ended up winning that game, and we won, that game in our last 3 and finished. I think we finished like 9-4 or something like that, and beat Tennessee in the Gator Bowl, not in the Gator Bowl, in the Peach Bowl in Atlanta. And had a really good year, but we could never get across the hump, even with some of the better teams we had. Like one year, like you said, Woody was in the Heisman race. He was the first player in college football history to rush for 1,000 and throw for 2,000 in one season.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? We had freshman All-American, and my other roommate, Derek Hamilton, was freshman All-American.
Yep.
Ben Hall was a freshman All-American. Aries Curry was a freshman All-American. This is all on one team. You know what I'm saying? And then we signed Roscoe Crosby in that same class, who was the first player to play professional baseball and college football at the same time. Like we had tremendous amount of
players. Yeah,
we had players on top of players. You had Justin Miller at corner. You had Ty Hill, who moved from running back to corner. And I'm talking about guys that have played in the league for a long time.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And so we just could never get across that hump, man. And you never thought that it would take off the way that it did. But I think what happened, I'm not going to say I know what happened. They signed a transformational player in Deshaun Watson.
Oh, there it is.
And
it is.
And the rest is history.
It's crazy because as I'm listening to you tell that story, Troy, I tell people all the time, like, having grown up in South Carolina, I explain to people, like, what you see at Clemson now, I was like, that didn't happen. They were traditionally, they won the national title in 81, but they were like a 9-3, maybe 8-4 type team. University of South Carolina, when I was probably in like middle school, they were in the Metro Conference, which doesn't exist anymore. They left the Metro Conference and went to what? This Clark calling me. Hey, Clark.
What up?
Hey, I'm on the podcast, man. Say what's up.
Go ahead. Go ahead and do your thing.
All right. I thought I had my phone turned off. I'll call it back. I should get a fine for having my phone on during the interview. Um, but anyway, yeah, so it's like you don't have we didn't see that type of dominance or whatever like that, and then Clemson just takes off. And it's funny because you mentioned, Deshaun Watson, having living in Atlanta, there's people in Atlanta that's still mad the fact that Deshaun Watson basically was in Georgia's
Back door.
backyard
Yep.
and couldn't get him, and he goes up the road to Clemson, and the rest is as they say, is history. So even going back to coming from high school, coming from Orangeburg, South Carolina, Orangeburg Wilkinson High School, then you go to Clemson and you take this scholarship and you're dealing with equipment.
Mm-hmm.
What was that like? Because like that's not something that you don't, because I was a marketing major. Especially from being being involved with a football team or being on a football team, particularly in college, that's not really the majors that you see. You see guys with PE majors. You have your offensive linemen that'll be space engineers and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
that ain't really the thing. So how was that at Clemson?
Man, we had a really, really good program,
Okay.
right? And so in the equipment room, it was a plethora of different types of majors in there, right? I think I might have been one of the only ones, me and maybe Kurt, the sign man, who came in with me. That's a crazy story in itself, but I think me and Kurt might have been the only ones that majored in PRTM, which was Parks, Recreation, Tourism Management. But we had some package of science majors in there. We had some education majors in there. We had some management majors in there. So it was about 12 of us on any given year in the equipment room. And we all, had majors out of this world. But I think the difference between me, Darren Harrison, who was also from Orangeburg, and everybody else in the equipment room, me and Darren was just there because of our relationship with Coach Stock.
Okay.
Right? The other guys were there because they grew up Clemson fans.
Okay.
Like this was a dream for them. You know what I'm saying?
Difference.
Yeah, like they dads and they moms were season ticket holders. And one of our buddies in the equipment room, Jim Bickley, his parents had an RV that parked in lot 4. And so every home game, we would go set up the stadium and then shoot over to their RV and get food. And so these guys were diehard, lifelong Clemson fans. We became Clemson fans when we started going to school there.
Right.
Those guys grew up going to games, and they, you can't say Gamecocks around them, and they it was something totally different. So for me, coming in as a high school football player, hadn't played football, all the way from little league all the way to high school, and then now taking this step to come off of the field, it was a little different for me because it took a little longer for me to get used to not being one of the boys,
right?
Being another one over here,
and still being involved with the team, though.
Still being involved. So we got to live up to certain expectations. You know what I'm saying? You can't make friends. You can, but you can't. And if you make friends, hey, you can't be my friend when you come to the window. Right, because I got to treat you like everybody else. So if you come up for another pair of gloves and you don't bring your old gloves, I can't give you a new pair of gloves. You know what I'm saying? Like
Troy, we didn't have that problem at South Carolina State.
Mr. Dave wasn't going. Mr. Dave wasn't going.
Hey, gloves, man, you better get your own damn gloves. Mr. Dave ain't want to get no socks.
Mr. Dave wasn't going at all. But I mean, it was crazy for us, man. Like, I walk into an equipment room and I'm thinking about the equipment room at OW, and I'm like, man, this is like night and day. Like, so when I go up for the spring game before I, enroll, and I meet with the equipment guy and his staff, and Fonz was a great dude, man. I talk to Fonz to this day. Our head guy, Alfonso Smith, when I meet with him and I tell him I'm coming and I fill out everything I need to fill out, he was like, hey, he calls Darren over, which again was my homeboy from back home, and he said, hey man, take him back there in the back and get him right. So I go in the back of the equipment room, and Darren like, "What size you wearing?" So he shirt here, shirt there, shirt here, shirt, and I'm like, I ain't even get here yet. Like,
Right. You got
it
gear and
was
everything.
gear was crazy. So it was a major adjustment for me because I'm used to being on the other side of the wall. I'm used to walking in, trying to make a friend, and then that's passing out the gear so I can get an extra this or an extra that. And now I'm becoming that guy. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
But it all worked out, man. Some really good relationships and some really good friends that I met in those 4.5 years, man. It was cool.
And so you go from being the equipment guy at Clemson, and then after that, it just seems like everything takes off. Just like anybody else that's in college athletics, you move around from Arkansas Pine Bluff to Mississippi Valley State and I'm going off the top of my head. I know I'm forgetting a school, and you end up at Florida A&M. And now, for those of you listening, again, this is my guy right here. But Florida A&M is a huge rival for South Carolina State, where I went to school. So I don't like their colors. I don't like but it is a great school. And the reason why they are part of our rivals is because, like, anytime, and I kid you not, Troy, every year when the schedule came out, you looked for the FAM game. Where were we playing FAM at? Because you knew that was probably going to be the toughest game that we played every year, no matter what. And it's funny that I remember Clark and I were talking one day, and Clark said he made a good point. He said FAMU was always the barometer for our conference, the Mid-Eastern Athletic Conference. Florida A&M is now in the SWAC conference, but when they were in the Mid-Eastern Athletic Conference, or the MEAC, they were the barometer for how good the conference was going to be. If FAM was good, the conference was good. If FAM was down, the conference probably was down. So you get to FAMU and you find a home because you've been there now. What?
I'm getting ready to start my 3rd season.
Okay, I was about to say 3 or 4 years. Okay, so
yeah.
So what has that been like for you as far as the transition from, kind of moving around and then really settling in? And this looks like this is going to be, a pretty long stay for you.
Man, it has been it's been a whirlwind. And the reason why I say that, when I got here, I was hired by 2 of my really, really close friends, right? My head coach and I went to Clemson together. He was a quarterback there. He was Woody's backup. And then when Woody left, he took over for a little while before they, moved him out and brought Charlie Whitehurst in. So me and Coach Simmons have been friends since, I stepped foot on campus in 2000. And then we worked together at Middle Tennessee for about 5.5 years. I
forgot about Middle Tennessee.
Yeah, we lived together for a year. You know what I mean? And so I told someone this the other day. We both kind of manifested this back in Murfreesboro when we were at Middle. We would go out and hang out for lunch or dinner or whatever. And he said, "Man, one day I'm gonna get the head job at FAM." And at the time, he was like, "You gonna come and you're gonna be my equipment guy." I'm like, "Man, I'm not leaving Middle Tennessee to go work at FAM, dog. Like, nah, I'm not doing that." You know what I'm saying? But be that as it may, you know what I'm saying? We get here, and then the other person was our AD at the time, Courtney Gaucher.
Okay.
And funny thing about Courtney, when I left Middle Tennessee to go work at Rydell, Courtney replaced me as the equipment guy.
Okay.
So me and Courtney had a relationship, through equipment. We had met each other a couple times, and Coach Stock was like, "Hey, man, I need a young upstart guy that can kind of come in and take it from where you had it and take it to the next level." And so I reached out to Courtney. He was like, "Courtney, man, I'm leaving. Everything's in place, brand new, equipment room. We just redid it, the whole 9 yards. Like, you can come and take this and run with it." And so Courtney came, and Stock hired Courtney as the equipment guy at Middle, and then Courtney kind of worked his way up the ranks and eventually became AD at Florida A&M. So between Courtney and Coach Simmons, I got 2 of my tight men here in Tallahassee. So when they called, the hardest part for me making the transition from moving from Mississippi to Tallahassee was convincing Ash, right? Like, Ash went for it. She was like,
and when you say Ash, you mean your wife, Ash?
Yeah. She wasn't with it. You know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? Because even though she was in Itabena and I was in Jackson, I still would go home. And you guys know, we talked about it on the
Mm-hmm.
cipher all the time. But I would go home a couple of days out of the week, and the weekends and all of that. And so now I'm going from being able to drive home an hour and a half, 2-3 times a week, to I'm moving to Tallahassee and you still
Yep.
in Mississippi. And like,
Yeah.
so I had to convince her that
In
this
a
was the
in a
right
new in a
thing to
new
do
marriage too.
in a new marriage. You know what I'm saying? So I had to convince her, and it took a bunch of people. I had to call on a bunch of people to drop their 2 cents in. Some of
Mm-hmm.
our friends that live in Jacksonville, and Courtney came out. When I came down to look at the job, Courtney came out to eat with us, and she was like, "Courtney, I don't want to talk to you. Like, I don't want to talk to you." You know what I'm saying? But ultimately, looking back on it, man, it was the right move. It enabled me to come and set some groundwork and some stones down. So when she got ready to make the transition, everything was set and ready to go.
Okay.
So, like I said, man, she's been here now going on a year and a half, almost two. And
Okay.
I'll be starting my third year here too. So everything works out for the good.
Good. Good. And you know what's interesting, man. I mean, you started at Clemson, which is, big, what we call big boy football. And then you're now and you been around and been at a couple of HBCUs. I wouldn't necessarily call it. I mean, we know that there's a talent gap. That's obvious.
Mm-hmm.
But if you can play, you can play.
Yeah.
And we always talk about this in our group chat on the cipher. Like, if you're good, they'll find you. That it don't matter. And if you got that dog in you, they'll find you. Um, I did an episode maybe about a year or two ago on I think I called it the game. And I just talked,
Mm-hmm.
no, I called it game day. And I tried to put into words what a game day is like at South Carolina State University from a player's perspective, from the moment that you get up to the moment that you walk down to the field, getting ready to the time that you run on that field and they're playing, fight song and get up for the Bulldogs, and just that whole atmosphere. What is game day like at HBCUs in your experience? Because I always say, Troy, like, if I could take the game day experience and put it in a bottle and sell it, it'd be a bestseller. What,
Yeah.
what have you seen, in and you can talk about either FAMU or any other schools, just your game day experience.
Man, I'll tell you this. Um, I've worked at a few,
Mm-hmm.
and you called out a few of them, and then there's a few more that you didn't mention. But uh, game days in Bragg is something about it.
Wow.
Now, I'll say this: leading up to that 6 o'clock kick, and we kick off at 6 pretty much now because of the heat, and
Yeah, because it's
we
1,000
changed
degrees in
sidelines.
Tallahassee. That's why.
Yeah, we changed sidelines from when you guys played. Like, you all used to be on the press box side, and
Mm-hmm.
Fam used to be on the opposite side. Well, we switched that now
Okay.
because some Coach Simmons got here and he was smart enough to realize that the sun sets on that side.
It does.
So let's put them in the heat, and we take the press box. So we play at 6 o'clock now. So now in the age of uh, Saturday meetings and pregame meals and breakfast and all that type stuff, we have a lot of moving parts here due to facilities and all of that type stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So uh, we get to work on Saturday probably about 8 o'clock,
Okay.
about eight
Wow.
8:30. Our
Okay.
breakfast
Okay.
is typically at 9, so we'll eat breakfast at 9, and then we're going to meetings right after that. So we go meetings at from 10 to about 11 ish, somewhere around in there. We're in
Mm-hmm.
meetings and walkthroughs, and then we have a game day staff meeting. So up
Okay.
until that point, it's kind of cool, right?
Okay.
Some people have started to come. The parking lots hadn't really gotten filled yet. You might see a little bit of smoke from the grills, but by the
Oh yeah.
time we come out of the building, we go to
Yes.
pregame meal. We go to pregame at 2 o'clock, and we're making our way back to the facility. It's transformed into something you wouldn't even imagine, Kyle.
Man, listen.
Like,
Listen.
and we started something, and I don't know whether they did it before I got here, but I know since I've been here, we've been doing Rattler Walk.
Okay.
And so we come across the street, we go over to the old gym in Gaither Gym, and Coach does his last minute stuff over there. We do our call ups and our captains. We do something special. I've never seen it done at any other place I've been, but we have a captain's talk. And so each one of our game day captains, they have a couple minutes to address their teammates and just get some things off of their chest. And so we go captain's talk, and then right after captain's talk, Coach gives his pregame speech over in the old gym in Gaither Gym.
Okay.
And right after he's done with his pregame speech, I have a radio, so I radio over to the marketing team, and I said, "Hey, coach is finished. We'll walk into the door," and we'll walk to the door, and the band, a small section of the 100 is in front of us. The cheerleaders line the walkway, and then fans and everybody line the walkway, and we walk from the old gym across the parking lot to the facility, to the field house, and it's electric. It's electric, and I think part of that, and you'll laugh at this part of the electricity in that walk is we got to walk by the bros. So we got to walk by the bros tailgate, and the bros are gonna be the bros, right?
Right.
By this time, it's probably 4 o'clock.
So they good and drunk.
They good and juiced up. They good and juiced up. So, but nah, man, it's electrifying. And to add to that, we, knock on wood, we have the second or the third longest home winning streak in FCS right now.
Okay.
So we're 15 and 0 at home in the last 15 games. And so just that alone, the pride that the guys take when they run out of that locker room, and then our student section has been rated like number one in the country the last couple years as far as HBCU student sections go, and maybe even top 5 FCS, right?
Okay.
So it changed that atmosphere, with the 100 in there. We've added a DJ.
Okay.
So we got a DJ in there spinning, and him and the band are alternating who plays at timeouts and quarter changes and all that type stuff. So it's taking off, man. And I got to say it. Yeah, my mom came to the game we played South Carolina State 2 years ago, and I had her out in the north end zone, which is a section that some of our boosters and all those people go, and they got food and drinks and all of that.
Okay.
She was like, "Y'all fancy. we ain't got this in Orangeburg." I was like, "That's why I got it to where you can go out."
Right.
But yeah, it's different. Man.
It's special.
It's special. The difference that I think from HBCUs to PWIs is you'll go to a PWI game and everybody be dressed in colors. They'll have their orange for Clemson, or they garnet for whoever, right?
Right.
It's a fashion show in Bragg, though.
It's a fashion show. Any HBCU, you might get a blue tee. Because I'm coming to the game. I'm probably, because I'm like, let's say if I go to South Carolina State's homecoming, I'll wear a Bulldog t-shirt. Yeah. But if we're playing FAM in Tallahassee, no, I might not. I might come with some Gucci on. I don't know. You never know.
Now they may have orange. It may be orange or it may be green, but the way they gonna dress that thing up, man, it's totally different.
So let me go back to Clemson real quick. And I tell people this all the time, particularly when we talk about sports. Clemson, the city itself, is really the school encompasses the city of Clemson. Like literally, you step off the campus, you're no longer in the city of Clemson. But every Saturday, you got 84,000 in Death Valley. What is that feeling like of when you're coming down that hill? Running down the hill?
It's different during the day, than it is at night.
Okay.
During the day, it still makes the hair stand up on your arm, and you're like, man, like, all right, okay. But at night, when it's a 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock kick, and
it's pretty too. It's pretty. I mean, just as a fan of, and I grew up a Florida State fan, but I can appreciate what happens at Clemson. It's not like it. It's not
It's
like
not
it.
like it. And the thing that a lot of people don't realize, we were having a conversation the other day. Uh, we were actually at Alabama. We was at University of
Okay.
Alabama football camp, and we
Okay.
were sitting around eating lunch. And one of the coaches at Alabama played at Auburn, I think. And so he was like, "Man, y'all Clemson boys, yada yada yada." He was like, "Man, why y'all show that fake video on the screen when y'all going to the hill?" We were like, "What fake video?" He was like, "Man, they stage cameras like they on the bus riding with y'all." I was
They
like, "No,
do
dog,
take the bus.
that's real. Like
Hmm.
that's real." And a lot of people don't realize that. Like
Yeah, you
they
take the
looking
bus
at
from
the
what one
screens.
side of the campus to the other,
Yeah,
something like
so
that.
they bus from, so the locker room is in the west end zone,
Okay.
and the hill is on the east end zone. So to get to the hill, they get on 4 buses and they drive around to the opposite end of the stadium to
Hmm.
come to the hill to make the entrance. And the
Wow.
reason is, when the hill first was initiated, the locker room was in Fike Gym, which was up the hill uh, on that side of the stadium.
Okay.
So when they built the locker rooms in the stadium, they said, "Man, let's keep that running down the hill deal." And so that's how they started it, long time ago. And now it's just grown to this
Hmm.
grandiose type of event, to where it's cameras on the bus and they
Yes.
live streaming it in the stadium. And usually before the cameras, you didn't know the buses had left until the band started to make their formation.
Hmm.
So when you heard dun
Yeah.
dun, you knew the buses were leaving and the band was starting to make their way to the hill. Well, now they have the cameras on there, and so you see the guys walking out of the locker room, walking to the bus, and the police escort all the way around the stadium, and all of that. Man, it's electrifying. It's electrifying. And then
I
once you
gotta
do it,
right.
once you
Oh
go
yeah,
down
I can
there,
imagine. I can imagine. Wow.
yeah, it puts you
Um,
on a different level.
I gotta ask you because um uh somebody in the past mentioned they talked about the state of HBCU football, and the person that talked about the state of HBCU football was a coach at an HBCU at the time that he no longer is. We're talking about Deion Sanders.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a lot of, I'm not gonna get into Deion because I've done a podcast on Deion leaving, and I made my thoughts clear about that. But there was a faction, a huge faction of people that understood that Deion, he shined a bright light on his HBCU, not necessarily
Mm-hmm.
all HBCUs, but there were times when, in front of cameras, in front of microphones, Deion appeared to speak for HBCUs. Now, as two people, you and I, who care deeply about our HBCUs, we want to see them survive and we want to see them, prosper, particularly athletics, and more importantly, because we're involved in football. Um, so there was a lot of people that thought, like, because he left, like, the state of college football and at HBCUs is going to fall off the face of the earth, as if we started playing HBCU football when he got there a couple of
Exactly.
years ago. So what is your take on the state of HBCU football?
You know, Kyle, that's a great question,
Mm-hmm.
and it's funny. I guess I've known you for so long. I knew this question was coming at some point in time, and so I kind of practiced, with my wife. I asked Ash here a couple minutes ago before we got on. I said, "Hey, what do you think?" And I didn't just solely leave it to football. I just asked
Mm-hmm.
her about the state of HBCU sports. But what I can say is, it's a couple levels to this question, right? One, I think we're in a better place from
Agreed.
top to bottom, right? Because of coverage, from whether it's social media, print media, television coverage, all of
Definitely
those
TV.
things, right? Sponsorships, donor giving, all of the things that go into it. On the flip side of that, we're in a downward spiral that has to change quick because of the lack of draft picks that have happened over the last couple years, right? I think if we can get back the number of guys that had been drafted, several years ago, get that number back up to match the giving, to match the sponsorships, to match the television exposure and all of that, I think HBCU football will be at an all-time high, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't agree with a bunch of things that Dion said and did,
Same.
right? But there is one thing amongst others, but there's one thing that he said that I hold true, to this day. And he told us this when he first got to Jackson. He says, I'm going to do everything in my power to shine the light, not only on Jackson State, but on HBCUs as well. The problem with shining the light on things, it's going to show what's clean, but it's going to also show what's dirty.
Facts.
And I think that part is what we as a culture, we don't work to make good, right? When someone asks me, hey, how's TC gonna do at Jackson now that Prime's gone? I said the question is not how TC's gonna do. The question is how is Jackson gonna do now that Prime's gone? Right. And the reason why I say that is certain things that were status quo before he got there, he made them not status quo anymore. Because they were worried that if things didn't go right, if he didn't do or we didn't do what he asked, he was going to go to his phone. And he had 3.2 million followers on Instagram and another 1.5 on Twitter, right? So they were worried about the impact of what he would say on social media. And so let's get this right, right? So my response was, let's don't take it back to status quo just because he's gone and TC's there.
Facts.
Same thing here at FAM, right? When Coach Simmons, whenever the day comes that he walks out of the door, let's not do the things that we were doing for him because he's from this area, because his wife and his mom and his aunts and all his family graduated from FAM and all of that, and we consider him a Rattler. Let's not stop doing the things that we're doing for him just because the next guy may not be, right? And I think once we can get past those stigmas of we just need to do the right things because it's right.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Once we do that, I think we'll be great, right? Our facilities are growing. Are they to the level of the P5s? No, they're not. But like I tell people all the time, we don't need to chase the P5s. I just left the University of Alabama's facility. We ain't gonna get nowhere near that. Ain't even close, Kyle.
Right.
Ain't even close. For one, we ain't got the space to do that. What
too.
Right?
Yeah.
But who we can chase those low-level group of fives. You know what I'm saying? There's no reason why a South Carolina State facility can't match Coastal Carolina.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying?
And it's going to take money.
It's going to take money, but when you look at the type of alums that our HBCUs have produced, right? I didn't know this, but when I got to FAM, they started running down the list of people that graduated from FAM, and I was mind blown.
Oh yeah, it's a bunch of
them. Yeah, from Will Packer to Keisha Lance Bottoms to Kay Michelle to Common to Kane from Power. You know what I'm saying? All of these people, and that's not even scratching the surface.
Right, and that's just celebrities.
You know what I'm saying? The everyday Joe that owns a business over here, and all of these people that HBCUs have produced, all it takes is if we get $1,000 from each one of them, right? If every prominent South Carolina State grad gave a one-time donation of $1,000 and say, hey, we want this to go to athletic facilities.
Yep, that's it.
The south end of campus would look like who knows what, you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And so that's my thing. I think we're in a good space, HBCU football wise. I think we can be in an even better space if our people invested more with their pocketbooks instead of their mouth.
Preach.
right? Because I
Preach.
mean, we had these conversations.
Oh, all the time. All the
all
time.
the time, right? But let's just say, and we know it's not going to happen because coach is up in age and he's probably about to go to the house. But let's just say Buddy Pugh runs the table this year and they go undefeated, and Coastal Carolina says, "Hey, coach, hey man, come on over here, bring all of your winning traditions and all your ways and the relationships that you develop with the Zeuses of the world and all of these people, and come on down to Conway and let's take this thing to another level." Everybody in Orangeburg would be highly upset with Buddy Pugh.
Mad as hell.
You know what I'm saying? But 3/4 of those people that's gonna be mad still try to get in the game for free. Don't wanna buy a ticket to get in the game zone. All of the things that help grow that revenue pot, they not trying to do it, but you're gonna be mad when this guy leaves to take another job. You know what I'm saying? So if we can stop mountain lip service and write them checks and swipe them cards and Venmo and Cash App and Zelle and all these other money services we got out here, I think we'll be in a whole lot better space than what we are right now.
Oh, no question. And I agree 1,000% with you, man. I think for far so long we've and I've mentioned this on this podcast, HBCUs have done more with less. And so in saying all of that, and that's across the board. I don't care if you're at Prairie View, I don't care if you're at FAMU, I don't care if you're at Delaware State, wherever. The thing is now that the light is on us, let's do a little more. So so if we're able to do more with less, give a little more, and we can do a whole lot more. Because, like you said, will we ever be at the level or have the facilities? Because, like you mentioned, South Carolina State doesn't have the space to have the facilities that Alabama has. But you can take what you have and enhance what you have, and then you can take it to another level. And, it's something we always talk about is just what the vision is. And part of it, that's a part of it too. We talk with Steve, and Steve talks all the time about our boy Steve Beatty. Always talks about, financially contributing. And then also you have to have the vision. And I think that's part of not just at South Carolina State or Florida A&M or wherever. You got to have that vision as to where you want, because it doesn't matter. If I called the president of Florida A&M today and said, "Hey, I'm going to write a check for $5 million. If you can't tell me where you're going to earmark that money to go, then my $5 million doesn't mean anything to you." Because, or if you got 10 people that's going to argue about where the $5 million is going to go, it doesn't matter. Same if I wrote the check for South Carolina State. So, and I think sometimes, just like you mentioned, the key word, culture. In the culture, I think we've gotten the mindset of, and it's kind of the battle between the old and the new. And I know you've seen this in your travels. People saying, "Well, hey, this is the way that we've always done it." Well, what if you've done it wrong? You could have been doing it wrong for 20 years, and
nobody called it out.
Yeah, nobody called it out, and you're still saying, "Well, hey, this is the way we've always done it." Well, okay, well, hey, let's bring in some new blood who can give you more ideas as to, because, and that was one of the things that we talked about, with Prime, was that he established a huge social, because he was someone who had a huge social media reach. He had, at the very least, he had other schools saying, "You know what? We probably should film more. We probably should put more of this stuff on social media." I mean, now, do you have to have every meeting or every locker room session in you ain't got to do all that now. I mean, but that's what they do, and it worked for them. And what works at Jackson ain't gonna necessarily work at FAM. What works at FAM won't necessarily work at Savannah State, so forth and so on. Before I get you out of here, Troy, a couple quick questions. What's the loudest P5 stadium you've been in?
P5.
Yeah, P5.
Not to be a homer. LSU.
Was it a day game or night game?
Night game.
Yeah.
And it was just against us at Middle Tennessee. Right? It wasn't the Florida, it wasn't the Alabama. You know what I'm saying? So I can only imagine what it sounds like against one of those guys. But it was 2007. Yeah, 2007 LSU through the roof.
It's funny because I had Stahl on, and Stahl said the same thing. He said LSU night games. He said you literally, the ground is shaking. I think it's like maybe 95, 96,000 people in that stadium, and it's crazy. and their games, their night games, they've been drunk all day long. So by the 7:30 kickoff,
they've been drunk since Friday. It's
all
different.
right. So loudest FCS stadium you've been in?
Loudest FCS stadium, and they aren't FCS anymore. But I gotta say Jacksonville State.
Okay.
In the time when they were like that, when they were beating, when they were beating P5s, and they were in the OVC, like it got bananas in there. And they were probably the first FCS school that I saw their student section act like Power 5 students, shirts off,
body paint,
you know what I'm saying? And it was a night game. It was in November. It was cold, and they were intimidating. Dog, they came out the pregame with no shirts on, and our guys was standing there looking at them. I knew right then. I said, "Yeah, this is gonna be a long night. This is gonna be a long night." And they were senior night. It was 2017. It was senior night, and they made an announcement that senior class had not lost a game at home in 4 years.
Wow.
Yeah, it was crazy. Yeah, it was crazy.
Now, what was the other question I was asked? As far as Power Fives, no. Let me take it back. I'm gonna put you on the spot on this one, excluding Florida A&M, excluding South Carolina State.
Okay.
And this you can use your experience at Clemson or wherever. You did mention the Bros. For those of you scoring at home, Troy's, like my man Starworth, is a member of Mega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated. Who has the best homecoming? The smile on his face.
So I haven't been to all of them, right?
Despite
contrary belief, I haven't been to all of them. I've never been to Ante. They call theirs Jiho. I've never been there.
Man, it's decent.
I've seen Howard's, right? I hadn't seen Howard during the week. Like I seen Howard on a Friday, Saturday type deal. Theirs is pretty live, right? And I think what makes Howard's live is you never know who's gonna show up.
Never,
right?
Never.
Because it's DC, because of who went there, all of that. But I would say, and I have to had attend this homecoming, right?
Yeah.
So with that in mind, 1A and 1B.
Okay.
1A is Jackson State.
Okay.
Right. 1B is Tennessee State.
Really?
I'll tell you, there's some similarities in both of them, and then there's some obvious differences. The similarities are both of them play the game off of campus. Right?
Okay.
Jackson Stadium is downtown a little bit. Tennessee State plays homecoming at Nissan.
Oh wow, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, back then they were playing 2 games at Nissan and 2 games in the hole. The one thing about, so both of them have a pep rally, right? Tennessee State has theirs on Friday because there's no classes on Friday.
Oh wow.
Jackson has a block party Wednesday or Thursday night in downtown Jackson.
Oh,
they shut down about 4 blocks of downtown Jackson, and the center of it is a hotel that's downtown called the King Edward. It's the Hilton Garden Inn, but it's the old King Edward Hotel.
Okay, gotcha.
And so for 4 blocks, it's nothing but us. And it's bands, live bands playing on one block. It's a DJ on another block. It's food trucks. It's ridiculous.
Wow. Gotta check that out.
But Tennessee State, on the other hand, the first place I've ever seen do this. Nashville Public Schools go on fall break
Mm-hmm.
the week of Tennessee State's homecoming.
Wow.
And the reason being, they got tired of trying to find substitute teachers.
Yeah, because they ain't coming to school.
They ain't coming to word. So they
Yeah.
said, we'll do y'all a solid.
Right.
We'll give y'all this week as fall break so y'all can just go and enjoy homecoming.
Wow.
And so 1A, 1B, and then a very, very close second. I witnessed this year for the first time. Spell House.
Oh, well, man, listen. I've been a couple of times. It is as good as advertised.
Yes. I almost
It,
forgot about them.
yeah, Spell houses. Ooh,
Close second.
Spellman and Morehouse for those of you scoring at home. Yeah, that's tight.
If the football was better, they probably would surpass
no question.
one of
But
them. But because the football is not that good.
And like you mentioned a little earlier, like their homecoming, like you're going to be seen. You strictly wherever you go in that particular weekend, if you're going to the game, you're going to the tailgate, you are strictly going to be seen. You're not going to meet nobody. You want people to see you.
Yes.
All day long. So with Florida A&M now being in the SWAC conference, the bowl game is the Celebration Bowl in Atlanta. What is it going to take for Florida A&M? Because at the time of this recording, the season hadn't started yet, but by the time we drop this episode, it'll be right before kickoff. What is it going to take for FAMU to get to Atlanta to be playing the third weekend in December?
It's going to take a couple things, Kyle. One, we got to get off to a good start. In the last 2 years, we've fallen out the gate 0-2, and then we had to play makeup football, and we've been pretty good at that. Last year we won 9 in a row. The year prior to that, we won about 7. I think it was 7 or 8 in a row to finish the season going into the FCS playoffs in 21. But the bar is still Jackson State, right? It's like old Ric Flair. In order to beat the man, you got to beat
him. Yep.
And they are holding court right now. They are the reigning SWAC champs, and unfortunately for the both of us, we're on the same side, and we play week 1, right?
Week 1.
Wow. Week 1. So
wait, where y'all playing?
Miami. So this is the third installment of the Orange
I was about to say we should
Classic.
go, but we ain't gonna make that.
Yeah. So and it's crazy because this year is total opposite of what it was last year. Last year we had the week 0 game, so they could see what we were doing with the new quarterback and all that type stuff. This year they have the week 0 game against you guys, against the Bulldogs,
Yep.
In MEAC SWAC Challenge. So we get to see because they have new everything, new offense coordinator, new defense coordinator, special teams at whole 9. So we get to sit back week 0 and watch them. So to answer your question, man, we got to get off to a great start. And that means playing our best football early and winning the Orange Blossom Classic. Because if we don't win the Orange Blossom Classic, I don't know, with the way that their season is, I don't know whether Jackson will lose, 2 conference games. And that's been the thing the last couple of years. So if we beat them, we got a leg up. Right, we got a leg up. Of course, we don't want to lose any, but if we happen to bump our toe down the road somewhere, I think, and this is me, talking on 12 Kyle podcast, I think the East, outside of us two, is probably a little even keel. Right,
Yeah,
Alabama State will probably be the third team coming out of the East, and everybody else can kind of beat everybody else. So if the winner of the Orange Blossom Classic is going to be in position to make it to Atlanta,
they'll be
and
in
not
the
taking
driver's seat.
anything from the west side of the
conference.
no
doubt.
Just historically looking at it over the last couple of years, the strongest teams have been in the East, and I think the same thing holds true this year. So I think we have the tools. We have a all-conference quarterback returning, which Jeremy will probably be the preseason offensive player of the year. We have a first team defensive lineman returning who will probably be preseason defensive player of the year. Um, and so we have a couple. We have a two tackles returning, offensive tackles. One of them was first team all conference. I think Cam might have been second team all conference. Um, we have a dynamic playmaker in the slot at wide receiver. We signed two transfer portal running backs, one from Florida Atlantic and one from Nebraska, to go with a returner that we have back there. So we got a good three-headed monster in the backfield. Our defense, as they're coined here in Tallahassee, the Dark Cloud defense is probably one of the best assembled groups that I've seen in a long time.
Okay.
In the words of our defense coordinator, they got that boogity boogity. Like they can flat out run across the board. So like I told you when we first started, Kyle, like we pitched a tent in the transfer portal, and so we hoping that we benefit from our stay there over the last couple months. I told somebody I did a podcast a few months ago, and they asked about the transfer portal and how had it impacted us at Florida A&M, and I said, we're not trying to buy a house in the portal. I said, but we'll rent an Airbnb for a little while.
There you go.
And that's what we've done. We've rented that Airbnb, and hopefully, we can get a little return on our investment here come December. I think it's like the 18th or the 19th.
Yeah, 18th, 19th, over like that.
Yeah, in Atlanta. So I just need the boys there. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, for sure.
Whether we play South Carolina State or not, I need the boys in the building, man.
Well, that actually leads me to my last question, man. So, Celebration Bowl, FAMU makes it to the Celebration Bowl representing the SWAC. South Carolina State wins the MEAC, and so I'm predicting it. Now, this is my prognostication. South Carolina State represents the MEAC. FAMU represents the SWAC. We got these old two MEAC rivals meeting up, heading up in Atlanta. Our whole crew is there. We decked out, we partying, we having a good time. Who is Mama rooting for? Because Mama's a Bulldog. She's an alum.
Mama's a Bulldog.
She's an employee. She's been an employee for years.
Yeah.
And her baby is trying to win his first SWAC title. Who is she rooting for?
Mama gonna have on her garnet and blue. We've played the last 2 years, one in Bragg and one in Oliver C. In both games, Mama had on her garnet and blue.
Oh, she gonna represent now.
Now she came and took pictures last year outside the locker room, and her and Coach Simmons got a picture together, and we got our pictures together and all that. And she sat in her normal seats in the end zone, but she made her way to the visitors' locker room tunnel, at halftime and all of that. But she gonna wear her garnet and blue. She gonna wear her garnet and blue.
I'm gonna be honest. She might be in garnet and blue, but she'll be rooting for you.
She might be.
She'll be rooting.
But either way, she leaving happy.
Yeah. She can't lose. She can't lose.
She can't lose. She leaving happy either way.
Now, if that scenario plays out, I mean, we don't want to lose to nobody, especially not in the Celebration Bowl. But as a crew and as family, if we're gonna lose to anybody, I'm gonna be. The thing that I can say is, well, hey, my boy Troy got one. So that's,
I appreciate that.
I as much as I hate FAMU, much as I hate the colors, much as I hate everything about the school, is a great school, by the way. Which is weird because my son is talking about going to school there, and I'm like,
number one HBCU in the country.
Troy, that's where that's the number one school on his list. So I'm like, well, I mean, if it's free, you can go wherever you want to go. I was like, but if I got to cut a check, I'm sending my money to Orangeburg. But now it's his decision. But now on the real, man, like I said, just that we would be rooting for you.
I appreciate that. If we I'll make sure I stop by the equipment room and get some visors.
Oh yeah. Hey man, I need a visor, man. I always need a visor, man. Always need a visor. Before we get out of here, man, Troy, tell folks where they can find you. I know you're on social media a little bit. I know you're not. You probably won't be as active because you guys are ahead at the time of this recording. You guys are about to, kick it off in a little bit.
Man, I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. during the season, I'm probably most active on Twitter, and
Okay.
it's at LaTroy _Johnson. Instagram is Rags with a Z, RAGZ 1911, and Facebook is just Troy Johnson.
Okay.
Facebook is probably the latter of the three.
Mhm.
If you ask my wife, I probably spend 75% of my time on social media and probably another 10 with somebody else and then 10 with her. But
Mhm.
Twitter is probably the best place to locate me, especially if you want to talk about, football, family football, and that sort of thing.
Yeah, definitely. He is tweeting heavily about FAMU football on Twitter at LaTroy LATROY _Johnson. You guys have been listening to the podcast, so you know what if I mean. If you don't, it's 12 Kyle across the board. The podcast drops every Thursday at midnight. Be sure to subscribe. From time to time, we drop bonus episodes on Sundays. If you feel so inclined, hit us up on Cash App, $TWELVEKYLE. Again, that's going to do it for me. So for my boy, Troy Johnson, FAMU Rattler, I am your boy, 12 Kyle, the SC State Bulldog. We'll catch you guys next time. 5,000.